it's nice to have you here.
Thank you, it's really nice to be honest.
And you're a kind of colleague, I think?
Well, yeah, I work in a shop as well.
Yeah.
Well, you know all about that. I always say to children that to be a writer and to work in a shop is a really good combination, because when people come into a shop, you know this, they don't really see you, they see the thing that they want. No, the strangest person I ever met in the shop was a beautiful man called John Leather, who was in his 70s. If I just tell you one thing about him, he used to cut his hair by pouring vinegar onto it and then setting fire to it. And then hitting it till it went out. And he was a wonderful man. When he grew up, he was an actor. Him and his mother had a theatre company, just the two of them. That's another thing. But Violet Park, the real Violet Park, was a customer.
Also a customer. It really existed. Okay.
Well, no, her name was Eileen.
Okay.
I made some of her up.
Okay. Well, you know, nowadays you live in Hay-on-Wye. That's the little town with all the antiquarian bookshops.
It's the little town with all the old bookshops, and every year in May and June it has a very big book festival.
Okay. But before that you lived in London?
Yeah, in Camden in London.
And
I missed it.
Yeah, of course, it was a big change.
Yeah, it was a really big change.
Yeah.
But I go back.
You go back?
Yeah, and I still write about London quite a lot.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
Because it's more like seeing a beautiful bird and then catching the bird and pinning it to a board and taking it apart and trying to work out why it's beautiful. It's not quite the same as just reading a book.
No, it's just true.
But I did learn a lot.
Yeah. But it really put you off of real literature, didn't you?
It didn't put me off real literature, it's just that when I finished my degree I said, right, I'm not reading a book for a year.
Okay, and you didn't?
No.
Okay.
I listened to music and watched movies instead.
Well, you won a big prize, the Guardian Children's Fiction Prize. What kind of prize is that? Is it,
well, you can only win it once. And it's... I was really shocked to win it with my first book, actually. It was, you know, I didn't expect. It was just enough that it was published and that it didn't disappear.
Was your debut? Or?
Yeah, it was. Violet Park won the prize. And so it's a prize with a great prestige. It's a really good children's prize in Britain. And when I won, they phoned me to tell me. I think they phone you to tell you to make sure you show up, you know, to the. And so they phoned me to tell me, and I cried, of course, because I was so surprised. And then I laughed. And I have two daughters, and they were fighting. And normally I would go and intervene, and I just looked at them fighting, and I went to the fridge and got some champagne and went to find my husband and said, I just won the Guardian Children's Fiction Prize, and the kids just carried on fighting in the back. And I didn't care.
How old are your children?
Now they're 10 and 13. Mm.
Now they're getting into a difficult age, or not yet?
No, they're lovely.
Oh, they're lovely.
Still lovely.
Just like you. Okay.
They're okay, I'm waiting. Okay. Everyone keeps telling me, but you know, maybe it doesn't happen to everyone. Everyone's 13, oh, is she difficult? No. Yeah.
Time will tell. Let's have a look. You wrote Finding Violet Park, that was your debut.
Yeah.
And afterwards you wrote another.
Afterwards I wrote Broken Soup.
And what was that about?
Well, Broken Soup's about a girl called Rowan who has to carry her whole family on her shoulders because there's been a death in her family. She has a very little sister who's 6 called Stroma, who is delightful, I have to say, you know, in that way that 6-year-olds... My daughter, when she was 6, something sad happened in our family, and she just looked at us and went, can we just be happy now? You know, it's that thing that 6-year-olds have, or younger children have, which I think is extraordinary. So she has this weight to carry. It started, that book, with a negative of a photograph, in the same way that Violet Park started with an old lady that I loved because she was badly behaved. And I didn't know, when I was 19, I didn't realise you could be old and badly behaved, so I was quite inspired by that idea. This started with a negative of a photograph that I found. She prints it with a friend, and it turns out to be a photograph of her dead brother. And so she needs to find out why it was given to her, and why she didn't know about it, and who took it. And so it's a kind of a mystery, but it's also about... People sometimes ask me why my books are all about death, and I don't like that question very much, because it's actually about what happens afterwards, you know? It's about life, it's about what happens... There's a hole there, the brother's gone, and there's this horrible hole in her family, and it's about what fills that hole up, not the hole itself, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. But your first novel was also indeed about a urn.
Yeah.
It was a very strange book. I've read it.
Well, it's a strange beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, the beginning is very strange.
Because
I don't know whether all people...
there's a 15-year-old boy called Lucas, and he's going home very late one night, and he goes into a taxi office and he finds an urn of ashes. And he decides it's not a place to end up for eternity, so he decides to rescue this urn of ashes, which contains Violet Park. Yeah. And you see, I was always given a lot of credit for coming up with this unusual idea. Yeah. But this lady that I knew called Eileen, this badly behaved old lady, is in an urn in this office. It's not a taxi office, this is the bit that I made up, but it's not much, is it? She's in an office, and that's where she is. This book is about running away. I've always fantasized about running away. I ran away a few times when I was a kid. Sometimes I still think about doing it. Sorry.
You just wait a few years
yeah,
and you
just
run away.
Reinvent yourself somehow. So this boy Sam is 17 and he's running away from the countryside where he's grown up. He's running away from something that he's done, which you don't know yet because I didn't know yet, but it's a bad thing that he's done. And he goes to London to become anonymous. Because one of the things I noticed when I left London is that you lose your anonymity, and it's actually a really comforting thing to have. And I missed strangers, and I didn't ever expect to miss strangers. So he goes the other way, and he goes to London to disappear. And in the house where he finds himself, which is a house I actually lived in, 33 Georgiana Street, Camden Town, it's all broken up. It's a beautiful Georgian house, and it's all broken up really badly into tiny apartments. And in this house where he lives is a 10-year-old girl called Bohemia, who is dragged up, as they say, by her mother, but has no idea that she's not been given the childhood she deserves. She's really phenomenally optimistic, and I really like her. She's one of my favourite characters. And she refuses to allow him to disappear, basically because she needs a friend, but also because she has all this love to give, and no one wants it, so she's going to make him have it. And so it's this kind of unusual friendship, in the same way that Violet Park was about an unusual friendship, I suppose, given that one of them was dead. And so it's about a friendship between a 10-year-old girl and a 17-year-old boy, and they kind of save each other, I suppose, is the thing. And yeah, it's about running away. And it's about, in some ways it's a very optimistic book, because it's about, someone said to me it's like a fairy tale, which I really liked, because it's about being anonymous in the city, but it's also, in terms of the ant colony, this house where everyone is a stranger to each other becomes this whole, becomes this kind of odd family, which didn't happen in real life when I lived in this house, let me tell you. So this is the fairy tale aspect.
The characters in this novel, they're quite lonely people, if I might say so.
I think lots of people are quite lonely people.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm sometimes surrounded by my family, and I'm still a little bit lonely somewhere.
Really?
Yeah. No, is that weird?
No, it's not. You can ask Dr. Aaron. She's still here.
Well, there's this thing, you know, and you can know a person so well, but they're still actually unknowable. There's a bit of them that's unknowable, and that makes me lonely, that idea. And also quite safe, because, you know, I'm unknowable too. And I suppose it's about that. It's about, because they're all different, they're all on their own, but they actually do come together.
Yeah. It's a very good book. I'm half it. Yeah, I didn't finish it yet, but I will.
Oh, the ending's nice.
Okay.
It is, it's quite, I like the ending. Honestly.
What is the best thing about being a writer?
Well, my favourite moment is always waiting for that right word, you know. I don't know, it's really, there's so many lovely things about being a writer. I like the fact that when I make up stories and people, they feel more real to me than reality itself. That feels like a real presence to have.
Also a little escape, or?
Of course, escape. I mean, that's why I read. Well, and I'm proud, you know. It's nice to have something to be proud of. I didn't start writing until I was 34, because I thought, I must give my children something to be proud of me for. But I didn't really think that I would be proud of myself, which is nice.